I was born into a family that wanted me about as much as they wanted to pay the bills each week. They only looked after me because they had to. I was told that if I wasn't born, things would be better for everyone. Once statements like this start to become common occurrence, you start to feel desensitised to it all, and when I was 16 years old, I ran away from home. I guess I became what was known as a street drifter. I didn't have a home or any money. I just wandered around, sleeping in the warmest places I could find and eating whatever food I came across. The funny thing is now I look back, I can see that I felt more freedom on those streets than I ever did back home. It was dirty, scummy freedom, but freedom nonetheless. I didn't start breaking the law until I met my friends. They were other kids messed up like me. Each had a story far worse and more miserable than one before it. But this common trait is what drew us together. We became a gang, roaming from suburb to suburb with no real rhyme or reason. At first the crimes were nothing major. We stole from supermarkets every now and then and caused some public disruption. These affairs never lasted long because as soon as we smelt the scent of a cop, we'd move on pretty quickly. But one particular night, Tommy, the leader of the group, had scored the first hit we'd had in months. With the sweet poison coursing through our veins and our minds in the sky, we decided we needed money. The poor innocent bastard was coming home from work carrying his black briefcase. I only caught a glimpse of the blood as the hate-filled act I had just committed dawned on me. I left that poor man bleeding to death in a dark alleyway. It was only about 4 hours before the cops found me. I thought about resisting arrest, but the anger I felt had subsided into regret. And as I drove off in that police car, I deserted what I had left of my innocence back in that alleyway. I was shoved into a holding cell, and within a year I was already on trial. I sat down at my bench with my court-appointed legal aid, and he leaned across and whispered something in my ear. There was no point trying to argue, so I confessed, and like a coward I pleaded for a shorter sentence. I got 15 years and was thrown into the state prison. Once again the fire inside me began to burn, but it wasn't because I had left that man dead in the alley, it's because I had left him alive. My legal aid told me I had put him into a coma. I spent the days in prison as a recluse, and all my time was taken up by working and exercise. Both my parents died in a car crash about 2 years into my sentence. I felt like blaming them for all this, but in the end, it was just me. As time went on, I experienced things I wish I hadn't and got into fights I didn't need. But I guess all of that was a small price to pay for taking a man's life away from him. I had made one friend in my time there. His name was Cliff Thompson, and he had run the local boxing centre in town. He told me he was an ex-boxing champ, and after a while he started taking interest in my training. He said that if I ever got out I should come down and try out for boxing. I agreed, and I told him I would. 2 weeks later, Cliff got out on parole, and I continued my sentence for another long 8 years, until finally my time came around. I saw it as a second chance I did not deserve, but I took it anyway. The first people I went to visit were my parents. They laid in the ground at the local cemetery. I couldn't even work up the courage to stop at their graves. I just walked through and thought about everything. If this was a chance for redemption, I'm not going to waste it. I decided to visit the parents of the man I put into a coma. I knew his last name was Roberts, and so I went through the phone book and tried every house in the area until I found the right one. I guess I should have expected what happened next. Hell, I knew it was going to happen. I walked off feeling dumb for seeking forgiveness. I thought about trying to visit the hospital, but I knew that would be impossible. Even so, my cowardly self couldn't work up the courage to stand there and look at him lying in that bed. I'm weak. I didn't know what I had left, so I turned to the only place I knew in this town now. I found Cliff's boxing centre and I went inside. This place reminded me of home on the streets. He greeted me and I think it was the only smile I'd seen in a while. Our friendship grew and I started training like I told Cliff I would. For the weeks I was there, Cliff let me stay in the back room until my first fight finally came. And I won. With Cliff becoming my manager, I currently stand as one of the middleweight champions of Australia. Looking back now, I don't deserve this title. I don't deserve anything. I've accepted I'm a violent, angry man and that forgiveness and redemption don't always come. I think this is something I needed to learn. I haven't moved on. I still feel regret and pain for the poor man I put into hospital. But the forgiveness I seek for that is not something I deserve. A crime is a crime. Boxing is a blessing that allows me to take that anger and let it out with aggression on somebody else. And yes, it might not be right or good, but in this world and in this town, those lines have blurred with wrong and bad. Sometimes things don't change. Sometimes people can't change. But now what I know is, once you realise you're nothing, that's when you can become something.